Mangalam Gurudevaya Devyamatrik Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Brindevyo Sarvalokaya Mangalam Om Stapakaya Chidharmasya Sarvadharma Sarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Mangalam Om Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatgurum Parapadme Tuyostritva Pranamami Muhur Muhur Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Deva Param Brahman Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Om Sarashiva-samārambam Shankara-charamajamam Ashmara-chara-prayantam Vande Gurum Param Param Vande Gurum Param Param Sri Ganesha Sharad Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Om Bhadrakali Namo Nityam Saraswati Namo Namaha Veda Viranga Vedanta Vijastana Evacha Sri Ganesha Sharad Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Jai Ma Jai Ma Jai Ma. Very happy to meet with everybody again after a long break. So what are we doing? We're in the second chapter of the Devi Gita from the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, and this chapter, the title given by our translator, Mackenzie Brown, is the goddess as the supreme cause of the world, or cause of the universe, something like this, right? So the Divine Mother is explaining to the Himalayas, the gods, and now to us, how this is the case. And we have pointed out again and repeatedly that so much of, I'm going to switch view a little bit here. So much of the it's right now the Divine Mother is especially using arguments and descriptions from the Advaita Vedanta tradition, right? And in the previous chapter, in the prayers and things like that, and in the beginning of this chapter also, end of last chapter, beginning of this chapter, a lot of statements almost right out of the Upanishads. Vedic mantras have been shown, direct quotes from the Vedas, lifted. Also, a strong Upanishadic tradition is there, and now not only Vedic and Upanishadic, but now also the interpretation, the school of Vedic study or Upanishadic study. The Vedanta is the study of the Upanishads, especially this the Advaita tradition, and more specifically what we call the Advaita of Adiguru Shankaracharya. Right, there's different forms of Advaita. Right, even Tantra has many forms that are non-dualistic. But so the arguments and the language being used is primarily from the Advaita tradition. And we mentioned there are many reasons for this. Of course, these are also great truisms, right? But there is also it's hard to say, we have to be careful how we're describing. If a critical analysis of the dating of this book, the book comes at a time when Advaita Vedanta had a lot of cultural traction. Right, and so it was like, for instance, some of these verses we're going to read tonight, they're literally word for word from Sureshacharya's Vartika of Shankaracharya's Panchikarana text, right? So I mean, these are almost word for word. I haven't compared them, right? But I'm pretty sure there are at least a few verses are word for word. Right, and that happens a lot in the Devi Gita, right? There's sections, there's verses direct verses from the scriptures, from the Puranas, direct verses from the Mahabharata, direct verses from the Gita, right? And this is an example of direct verses from direct verses or very close summaries or of the writings of Shankara and the direct disciples of Shankara. There's an example of a direct disciple of Shankara being quoted by the Divine Mother. Of course, it's interesting that the Divine Mother, goddess, the primordial goddess before creation, millions and millions of years ago, when the gods were hiding in the Himalayas, right, before the birth of, just after the death of Sati, or the emulation of Sati, before the birth of Parvati, before the killing of the demon Tarakasura, she's quoting, she's quoting texts that come considerably after, which means, of course, that's the way we date. One of the ways we date text of dates. Whoever the authors that compose in the present form, the scholars and the scribes, right, that have composed the form that this text has taken, right, are using the available material and putting it together. That's not, it's, what does it do to the claim that, oh, the Divine Mother at the beginning of time spoke these words? Well, I think if we take it super literally, if we take that claim super literally, right, the way, then I think it profoundly challenges it and lowers its dignity by saying like, because then it's not true that this is unchanged, direct revelation from thousands of years ago, because she's quoting people that haven't been born for another 40,000 or more, for several yugas later. These people are born who's being quoted here, right? But you have to we have to, or we can also understand that texts are living things, right? The tradition, the oral tradition of this great conversation, these the various Bhagavatams surround the cycle of stories and teachings, the Puranic, the stories of gods and goddesses or incarnations, the battle between good and evil, between gods and demons, the various things that are mentioned in Puranas. If you remember our very first talk in the series, we talked about the different categories that have to be included in a Purana to be considered Purana, right? The way that that's oral tradition and genre, existing genre at a particular moment took this form, right? In response, like, there's a text, there was a disciple, and again, no, that's not true. There's somebody, or it's hard to say who is the disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, but there was the last living person who met Sri Ramakrishna, right? I have his book on my shelf. I'm trying to remember his name. Maybe I'll be able to remember it. He was a young child, and his father took him to meet, visited Dakshineshwar. And Sri Ramakrishna put his hand on the boy's head and they say, "May you live a long life, and may you be a great scholar." So he lived to be well over 100 years old, and he was in fact a great, great scholar, Sanskrit scholar, professor, wrote many, many important books. But one of the books he wrote is the Ramakrishna Purana, right, where Sri Ramakrishna's story is being told in Sanskrit, right? We have Bengali versions of his life, English versions of his life, right? This is a Sanskrit version of his life, right? Was very philosophically sophisticated. But at the very beginning of the text, Narayana is talking to Lakshmi, right? Where that Narayana is talking at the beginning of time that he, at a particular point in Kali Yuga, he'll have to take birth, right, as Sri Ramakrishna, so that scene, I mean, the life of Sri Ramakrishna in Sanskrit, beautiful, but a conversation before Sri Ramakrishna's birth about the life of Sri Ram, it seems historically suspicious, right? Such a, how would the author know what happened in Vaikuntha, right, before Sri Ramakrishna was born, right? But it's a tradition, it's a style of writing, it's a genre of writing, a spiritual writing. So I think we have to accept it on its own terms, right, and deal with it as authentic, authoritative, spiritual teachings that have come down historically and are historically conditioned, right? And so this is an example of that. So this chapter, last time we met, we dealt with, if in Vedanta, in Sankhya, even in Tantra and the yogic slash tantric traditions, a lot of us are members of, or adjacent to, or influenced by. We have this idea of the threefold body, the three bodies. I think I have hold on here. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Sorry. Same thing happened to me last time here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Sorry. Same thing happened to me last time here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, let me do it. Share here. Give me a You can see that, I think, I hope. Okay, sorry. We shared this one last time, and this is a graphic I used in our subtle anatomy class. This is how we see our body. Our body we have our physical body, which in the five kosha system and also in the Upanishads, the annamaya, the outer mode is made of food, annamaya kosha. That's our physical body. Our gross body made of the elements, and those elements are sustained in our body by food, annamaya kosha. Then the subtle body, which is our pranic body, our mental body, and vijnana, wisdom body, intuition body. We talked about that. And then the causal body, the subtle body is the subtle energies whose physical grossest manifestation is a physical body. So the stula sharira is a physical body. Stula means gross, right? And so the energy. So in our subtle anatomy class, we talk about the energetic bond, the pranas, and the kundalini, and the chakras, and the nadis, and we talk in that sense as the subtle energetic background or substructure for the physical body, or even the cause, the immediately preceding cause of the physical body or the gross body. And beyond that, before that, foundational to that, right, is the causal body, which is simply that from which everything springs. And so we think this is the anandamaya kosha, the bliss body in the five kosha series system, right? So that's true. That's how we think of ourselves. We're a physical body that below that, or that the cause of that is the subtle body, and then behind everything is the seed, the cause of everything, right? And so last time we spoke a lot on what that was. In Vedanta, in Vedanta, that's Maya. Maya is the cause, right? So somehow or another, out of Brahman, right? I'll get out of this. Within Brahman, there is a Shakti, an energy, a tendency. Each one of these definitions, way of describing, is critiqued by people who are critics of the school of thought, of the Mayavad school of thought, that Maya is an energy that somehow Maya, some energy that comes from Brahman, or inherent in Brahman, or it may be a misreading of Brahman, but it's not exactly Brahman, right? That Brahman's everything, but it's not exactly Brahman. But from that, from that comes, if that Maya is just illusion, we see an illusory world as a result of it. If that Brahman is a physical, some sort of physical something, right? At some level, we get out of that a physical world, something like this, right? So, and in the Devi Gita, in the Devi Gita, in the previous beginning of this chapter, the Divine Mother said that I have a mysterious energy called Maya, right? And she describes it in different ways. And then she says, and that Maya. So usually we think very often we're regurgitating this or repeating this, but I think it's really important to understand the various schools of thought and the school of thought that this is coming from. Very often when we take this Maya, Brahman, and Maya ontology categories, and we put in so we have Brahman and Maya, or Brahman and Shakti, and therefore Shakti becomes some sort of mysterious power of Maya, right? When we have that ontology, these two categories, and then we put in then we have Kali is Shakti, or Bhuvaneshwari is Shakti, and the goddess is Shakti, and therefore the goddess is Maya, right? And the goddess is the energy, the real or fake energy, somehow the energy of Brahman, right? That's a very common thing, Brahman and its energy, Brahman and Shakti. Even Sri Ramakrishna talks like that, Brahman and his Shakti, or it says Brahman and Shakti are non-different, right? Or identical, right? So that's a unique tantric perspective. But in the Devi Gita, in the Devi Bhagavatam, Bhuvaneshwari, it's a I would call a high Shakta theology, right? Where the goddess herself is Brahman, right? She's not the Shakti of Brahman. She's Brahman. And as Brahman, she has a Shakti called Maya, right? So it's not Brahman and it's Shakti that we call the goddess. The goddess is Brahman. And one of the infinite energies or qualities or possibilities within the goddess is Maya Shakti or Maya, right? From which she creates, out of which she creates this world. So that's the idea behind this. So she's describing how she creates this world through Maya. So I'll go to look at these verses real quick, and then we'll catch up and jump off where we are. Okay, where do we were. So I'm just reading a few verses that we read in our last meeting. This self, however, by its own Maya, the self which is Brahman, which is Atman, which is Bhuvaneshwari, the goddess, right? By its own power of Maya, conjoined with desire, action, and the like, right? Kama and Kriya, right? Through the influence of the prior experiences ripening in time, and according to the law of karma, we talked about that the pre-existing souls, the pre-existing Shakti, have their own pre-existing karmas, right? And out of the need for those karmas to fructify, this is what agitates the world, what agitates Maya to create a world, right? Right. And by confounding the primal elements, being desirous to create begins to bring forth, right? So confounding, mixing, confusing, confound has many meanings like this, right? Begins to desires to create, she begins to bring forth the world, right? The resulting creation, devoid of intelligence, will be further described to you, O Mountain King. Now, this devoid of intelligence is saying that Maya is not conscious, although Brahman is Shakti, the goddess is Shakti, but Maya is not conscious. Other schools of Tantra would say that Maya is Shakti, Brahman is conscious, and Maya is also conscious because it's the Devi. Anyways, this is just, I mean, I can't imagine, but can't pretend to be in the mind of the people who composed this version, or what this divine revelation in the mind of sages by the goddess. But because it's used in this language Advaita Vedanta, this is a view of of the classic Advaita Vedanta school, that Maya is not conscious, so she uses that language. The resultant creation, devoid of intelligence, will be further described to you, O Mountain King. This extraordinary form of mind, which I have mentioned, is unevolved, avyakritam, unmanifest, avyaktam, right, and yet become segmented through the power of Maya. So this avyakta is important because that's going to come up in all these verses. It's a philosophically important term. Then we have all the religious treaties, means all the Vedas and Tantras and Puranas, right? The Shruti and Smriti, all really declare it to be the cause of all causes. That's our title of last meeting's talk. If you find it online, we use it as the cause of causes, right? The cause of all causes. In the causal change, she is the original. She's the uncaused cause, the first cause, like, or the foundation in which causation exists. That's another way to think of her. The primal substance behind the elements, and having the form of being consciousness and bliss. So she also has, so this is interesting. We dwelt on this last week. It's not conscious, this Maya, yet its nature is being consciousness and bliss, right? So it is both conscious and not conscious. It is both the Devi and not the Devi. It is both Brahman and not Brahman. It is both real and unreal. These are classic descriptions of the Maya idea, right? And then bringing it all together in a very classic Vedantic sense, it is a condensation of all karmas. It is a seat of will, knowledge, and actions, Icha, Jnana, and Kriya. We described that last time as the three intrinsic powers of Maya, these intrinsic powers. It is expressed in the mantra Hrim. It is the primal principle, so it is said. And in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, very often you'll see this type of setup about the supreme cause, the source of everything, and it says described as Om, the pranava mantra, right? So this being a shakta, a high shakta text, right, of a high Sanskrit, high Shakta text, it's reinterpreting the Omkar to Hrim, which is a primary mantra of the Devi in general, and is specifically the primary mantra of Bhuvaneshwari. And it's called her Pranava mantra. It's equivalent to the Pranava, the Omkar, the Om mantra. But in her text, actually, Omkar, it's not equivalent. It's the supreme. What most people think is the quality of Om is not true. That the things they attribute to Om, this is attributed to Hrim. Om is a lower a later or low. It comes after. Hrim is the source of everything. It is expressed that Maya combined, that Brahman, the goddess, and it's her Maya. It's Maya. That's the seed of everything that creates everything. That's itself not created, and not, it creates everything. That itself is not active, is the cause of all activity. Itself is unmanifest. Avyaktam is a source of all manifestation. In other words, it's a seed, the cause, the causal body, the causal seed of the universe, right? That is Hrim, that is Om. That's what we're being talked about. So we'll pick it up from there with a gulp of strong tea. So actually, I'm maybe I'll get out of this for a second. I wanted to quote, there's a verse from the Taittiriya Upanishad, book 2, chapter 1, verse 2, if you want to look it up, right? And I actually don't remember where I got this translation, so I have the Sanskrit here. It looks good enough, right, from what I can tell, but I don't remember whose translation it is. It says, from my material energy, right there, meaning Shakti or Maya, from my material energy, the ākāso is ether, the space element, was created. So from my material energy, which is Maya, here it's Maya, comes ākāso. From ākāso comes air, from air comes fire, from fire comes water, from water comes earth. And then, so that's a traditional 5 elements: space or ether, ākāso, air, fire, water, earth, right? These are the 5 elements, classical traditional elements, right? And then it goes on, it lists, in this particular verse, it mentions things that are made, later things that are, like when you have these 5 elements, then you create things out of those elements. So it also lists, was created, ether or space was created, from ether, air, from air, fire, from fire, water, from fire, earth, from earth, plants, and from plants, food, and from food, man, right? Thus man is of food essence, right? So it says from the 5 elements, create plants. We eat plants, right? And therefore our body comes from these 5 elements, right? And from food we come, out of eating food, the human is talking about the source, the creation of humankind starts with the elements. These elements, earth, fire, water, ether, are not like material elements like analyzed in modern science, like the periodic table of the elements. This is not a periodic table. There's a very funny. Swami Bhajanananda, are you there by any chance?
Yes.
Yeah, there's who's that funny political piano player that we liked from the 20s and 30s and 40s and 60s.
Tom Lehrer.
Tom Lehrer has this very funny song on the elements, right? And it rhymes, I don't remember. I'm definitely not a non-scientific track school major, right? I went out of my way to avoid scientific topics as best I could, but it's very funny. It's very rhyming. The way that you can sing all the elements, right? And at the end of some versions of that song, you can look it up online. It's very funny and very sweet. He's a funny writer. Then he says, or then we can go back to the pre-Socratic days. It's like earth, fire, water, or ether. Dun, dun, it's just 4. Actually, what even 5? I think they had 4. Like air, fire, water, air, fire, water, air, fire, water, earth. Like it was like a really simple, rather than this long thing. So it's obviously not that type of list, right? I sometimes describe it as like experiential, right? The things we see are primarily, not primarily, are exclusively the things we experience. We experience vacuity, space. We experience air, things in a gaseous state, right? That you can feel, but you can't really see. I wave my hand through the air, you can feel it, but I don't know what I'm feeling. I know I feel some things. I know something's there, even though it's not obvious. That's air, right? Then you have fire, water, things in their liquid state, and then things solid, right, in their solid state. So these are the 5 ways we experience things, and that is connected to the 5 senses by which we experience things. We experience things. We experience the world. There may be much more to the world than we see, or just see what I said, than we see, right? That's giving extreme preference to one sense. It's as a way of understanding. So there's more to the world than perhaps there's more, almost certain there's more to the world than we see, hear, feel, taste, and touch, right? These are, anyway, if I get to, well, these are our topic today. We'll get to them, right? But how will we know, right? For our experiential purposes, there's 5 senses, and therefore there's five 5 elements, 5 ways that the world are. A combination of those create our world, right? Maybe it creates the whole world. Maybe that's it, right? And but from our experience, this is our experience, right? Our world is in these 5 categories, and it also makes sense in the later yogic and tantric traditions, in the subtle anatomy tradition, when we talk about the chakras, and each of the element is given a chakra is assigned, or an element is associated with a chakra, where the base chakra, Muladhara, is the earth element, and above that, in the genital region is a water element. At the navel region is the fire element. At the heart region, or lung region is probably more accurate, is the air element, right? At the throat is the space element, right? So you have that stacking, right? And then you have the idea of Kundalini, right? And of the idea of like infinite consciousness, right? Which is the source of everything, is beyond everything, right? We don't know what it is, but then it's first, of course, there's higher things like mind, intelligence, ego. These are abstract psychological principles, right? Which yoga also holds as elements also. So actually, we're not just 5 elements. There's more than 5 that we can experience, such as thinking, identifying, analyzing. These are also mental states that we can experience the world. But anyways, you have these abstract principles. Then the biggest idea we have is that of space, in which things exist. Then you step that way down into, we begin to limit that, right? Becomes air. You limit that pressure. That if you put a bunch of air and you squeeze it together, it becomes fire. It heats, right? That's a further limitation of that infinite space or consciousness, down to heat. Heat in Ayurveda and this type of way of thinking of stuff, it creates condensation. The idea of that you put something under pressure, under it creates heat, but then it becomes liquid, right? And then liquid, you cool it, you slow it down, you thicken it, and you take away its dynamic movement. It becomes solid, it becomes earth, right? So our body itself is seen as a map of this metaphysical principle of how consciousness, through the 5 elements, comes down and becomes the physical world, right? That is, and so it comes down symbolically or metaphorically, or mapped in our body as the chakras. And then the yogis use that as a map to find the way back to the source. We start at the Muladhara, earth, body consciousness, material, the gross body, the gross world, gross consciousness, and then we go element by element, absorbing those elements into their preceding cause, into mind, intelligence, ego, and then we go up to Mahakarana, the great cause, Prakriti, and all the way up to ideal, and in that idea that you can experience even the bliss of infinite Brahman, right? Beyond the world of the elements, which means, by saying beyond the realm of the element, is saying beyond the manifested world. Right. So that's what's being described. It's using that same language, So this language of the elements as a manifested world is very practical, right? This is in our yogic world, we presuppose that. So let me there's a text. Okay, let me show. I have a can do a graphic here. Oh, okay, hold on. I'm going to give me 1 second. There's always a problem. Can you see that chart? Okay. That okay? No? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I had an older form of my because I was only dealing with verses from the previous week. I didn't realize that what I had open was a without any of today's verses. So I had to go up and find the original one. So this is a very typical, this is from the Sankhya school. This is also one of the graphics we use in our subtle anatomy class to understand the 24 cosmic, the 24 tattvas, or 25 tattvas, the 24 tattvas. So in the Sankhya, in the Sankhya school, right, you have two ontological realities. Purusha, which is a self or consciousness, the conscious being. Purusha means person, conscious soul or conscious entity, right? And then you have prakriti. Somebody pointed out that I wasn't pronouncing the R, so I want to make sure I get that right. Prakriti. I sometimes skip it when I mumble. Prakriti is material. Yes, Swami. Yes, Swami.
We're seeing the Devi Gita verse 2.22, but
okay,
no chart.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Let me try again here. Get it right. Oh. Sorry.
Sankhya chart.
Yeah. Can you see that?
The Sankhya chart, 25 tattvas.
Okay, you see that. Okay, good. Thank you. That's good. The right one. Thank you. Purusha, Prakriti, right? So, so you have these two ontologies, two real things. One is consciousness, the conscious being, and one is the material reality, right? Prakriti, right? And here it says unmanifest, that's avyakrita, avyakta. Right, term will come. We already used it, and she already used it. She'll use it again in these verses. She's avyakta. This is avyakta, that comes down into mahat, which is these are, we're not going to do like a lot of class on Sankhya, but the buddhi and intelligence, then the ego, and then it takes different, then that manifestation evolves. Actually, how does Prakriti evolve? By the presence of Purusha, this conscious entity, energetic entity, causes agitation in Prakriti, and starts a movement coming, right? And through Mahat and Ahamkara, and then through the different gunas, it becomes the five you see here, the tanmātras, the subtle here's the subtle senses, the subtle elements actually, which is sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Then the things that those things create. So it's interesting. Those things then go to create what they hear, touch, see, taste, and smell. Right. So they are the cause of space, air, fire, water, and earth. Right. And that's a strange thing for us to say, because that's not the way we usually think of the way we usually think of evolution and the senses. We think, oh, there are things somehow or another, there are things in the world in various stages, and in order to perceive them, our senses have developed and can perceive those things. We're not perceiving those things creates the things, right? And this text that we're reading today will actually kind of describe how kind of that's done. And then here it goes into other things, the five organs of action: hands, feet, speech, elimination, and procreation. And then the senses, the gyanendriyas, the karmendriyas are the organs of action, and the senses are the organs by which the tanmātras perceive the mahabhutas, the five elements, right? So this is classic Sankhya, right? Of course, in some certain very sophisticated, philosophically sophisticated forms of tantra, like Kashmir Shaivism, they have another system that with extra tattvas that goes, because this is not satisfying to generally, this list is not satisfying to everyone, right? Because it's saying that there's these two different realities, Purusha and Prakriti. There's spirit and simplistic spirit and matter, right? We are spirit. We identify with matter, and therefore we suffer. The idea of understanding this, and therefore we can focus through meditation techniques, understanding the system, the map, and the ontology of it. But then also through the yogic system to separate, to have the self, the perceiver, rest in its own nature, unagitated, and unidentified with the evolutes of Prakriti, right? And therefore become free and liberated, right? That's fine. But in the devotional schools and in the tantric schools, in many tantric schools, as well in Vedanta, this is not exactly the way it's seen, right? And so, yes, tell me.
I just want to know what your understanding is of, so if Prakriti is the objective world or material world, and it has no consciousness, how does it produce consciousness? So
it doesn't.
Senses.
That's the thing, is that according to Sankhya, it doesn't produce consciousness, right?
How do we have sensory knowledge and
because Purusha, that's Purusha. Purusha is reflected on and actually Vedanta will say this too. The Purusha or Brahman, there what you use Brahman or Atman, is reflected, right? Shines on and reflected on the evolutes of Prakriti and identifies with it. So through the reflected on the mind, it thinks; reflected on the senses, it sees and hears like that and identifies with it, right? See, in a normal sense of kind of materialistic, modern materialistic, I mean, it's really almost a trite thing to say, materialistic science, right? But material-based science, where the organism develops sophisticated enough that consciousness somehow or another springs from the arrangement of the elements, right? That the elements themselves somehow they create consciousness. But you hear Purusha is conscious, and it's always separate, right? And it reflects. So anyway, this is one way, and Vedanta will say something similar, right? But this is not exactly what Ma's saying, because Ma's she's not saying that I'm like I'm Purusha, right? And Prakriti is something separate. That's okay. You're like, but it's not it's describing a little different. It says, from what you said so far, from my energy as Maya. Here we if we want to correlate it with Prakriti, right? My energy is Maya, right? There is a desire to manifest, to create, right? Due to the pre-existing karmas and desires of living beings, and that's a mysterious thing to say, right? We talked about that last time. And then she doesn't talk about how she becomes first buddhi or mahat, and then how then that agitates more and becomes ahamkara, and then becomes the sense, then becomes the elements, right? So it kind of skips it and just says from that the elements come. That's what she's going to say, right? And it's using a yeah. What time is it? Okay. The where this idea is best described and where Ma seems to be, or the original people whom she revealed it through their study, comes from a very important text attributed to Adi Shankara called the Tattva-bodha. Tattva-bodha, right? Tattva-bodha is usually the first text to study in Vedanta. If you're studying Advaita Vedanta, this is a very common first text, right? Because it gives a vocabulary. It defines it defines key ideas, right? And it describes the qualifications, the prerequisites and qualifications of study of Vedanta, describes the nature that there is a self, it's unchanging, there is consciousness, right? Then it also describes the three bodies we're describing today, right? Now we're working the causal body, the subtle body, and the gross body. It describes the five Shis, Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Jnanamaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Annamaya Kosha. It also describes the three states. Remember, Ma had used that language that she exists, the self exists unchanged within the three states, right? Of waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep, right? And we have different types of experiences in these three states. That describes those three states. It also describes the pure self, which is untouched, unchanged within the three bodies, or independent of the three bodies, within the five Shis, independent of the five Shis, within the three states, like this, right? So in that text, it also there's tata akshaya sambhutaha akashad vāyuḥ vāyus-tejo tejasa apaha abhyaha prithvihi. From, it says tata, from that is from Maya, right? She's describing with Maya, from Maya originated ākāso, space, right? And from space, air originated, and from air, fire originated. From fire, water originated, and from water, earth originated. So that's a direct statement, right? So this is one of the places where this is mentioned, right? And we'll go back to that. Okay, let's go to our verses. This is my tendency, so much background, I'll never get to the verses. This is today's. So the previous verse, the one we left off, is that which is the seed, the cause, the seed, or the cause, the causal form, the causal body of the universe, as well as us, right? Is Maya, that's connected or from or united with the Devi as Brahman, or as consciousness, right? It says it is expressed in the mantra Hrim. It is the primal principle, so it is said. From that primal principle, right, comes, here we are. Let me get my notes on this. Verse 28, 27. So what I'm doing, you see above, there's like a verse and a half, right? Because of the way it's
But yeah, I don't know if it's just me. I don't see the verse.
Anybody else see the verse?
Nope.
Okay, see. Okay, here I am. So that's the thing. I've been assuming you're reading what I'm reading the whole time. Let me. Now, do you see a verse? Swamiji? I can't hear you.
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay.
27 and 28.
Okay, so thank you. I'm sorry. What we were looking at before, I just show you, that was the chart I was looking at before that describes the. I was assuming you were seeing that. Please forgive me. I was assuming you were seeing that.
We saw the chart. We
You
could
saw
see
the chart. Okay, but you didn't get to that.
No.
And now you see that. You see the 5 elements there in the
Yes.
graphic. Thank you. So you see, so we're going off, it's going to be a little bit not out of order, but not just clean verses, right? Because sometimes an idea finishes in a verse, in 3 verses, and the next idea starts in the middle of a verse. So in order, just for the sake of clarity and having things distinct and concise and distinct on a page, I've separated the verses a little bit. They're in the right order as far as I know. It gets confusing when you start chopping and moving things from one page to another half verse. Like for this one is the full verse of full verse of 27 and the first half of 28. And the next one, and then the next one will be, let's see, yeah, so anyway, we may have gotten off a little bit. We'll try. Okay. Tasmādākāśa utpannaḥ śabda-tanmātra-rūpakaḥ bhavet sparśātmako vāyus-tejo-rūpātmakaṃ punaḥ. Verse 27, first half of verse 28. Jalaṃ rasātmakaṃ paśāt tato gandhātmikā dharā. Out of that primal substance indicated by the mantra Hrim is Maya. Here, that's the topic being described. And from Maya, which is her energy by which she creates the world as the cause of the world, right? That's the topic. Out of that prime cause, from the causal body, he's going to describe how we get a subtle body. Right, that's the move, right? And then later, from the subtle body, how we get a gross body, or we could say she's describing the causal, subtle, and gross body of the world, but simultaneously, it's our cause, our subtle body, and our physical and our gross body are part of the world. As far as we know, there's not much more beyond our only evidence of the world is our body, right? And through our body, so. Out of that primal substance, tasmādākāśa utpannaḥ, right? From that primal substance, something awoke, stirred, manifested, arose. I like that he used the word arose. Tasmādākāśa utpannaḥ. No, hold on, let me see. Tasmādākāśa. Arose ether, right? Did I say that? Let me see. Yeah, arose ether. So out of that primal substance arose ākāso. Tasmādākāśa utpannaḥ. Then it says endowed with the subtle quality of sound. Right. The word here is the tan. You see that word tanmātra, right? The topic in the next 4 or 5 verses is going to be the tanmatras, right? So the element is ether, but the ether is only perceived as per tradition, right? Through sound. Its sense experience is sound, right? Right. So its quality, so what is tanmatra? So we could say it is the subtle quality, right? The subtle quality of the gross element of space or ether is the subtle element of sound, right? So this is, they have to say that the gross element of ether has its quality of the subtle. It's made of the subtle element of sound, right? So endowed with the subtle quality of sound, śabda-tanmātra-rūpakaḥ, right? Its essence, its form, the tanmatra is that of sound, right? Bhavet, what's the next one? Then arose, so from sound, then came, after sound is air, or after space is air. Then arose air, characterized by the quality of touch. Bhavet sparśa-atmako vāyuḥ. Vāyuḥ, air, whose quality, his nature, whose essence, right, is sparsha, touch, a subtle quality of touch through air. Next arose, characterize, next arose water. Jalaṃ, jalaṃ means water. Rasātmakaṃ, whose essence is rasa, taste. Water, we get taste. Next arose water, characterized by taste. Jalaṃ, rasa, atmakaṃ, paśāt. Right. So now we have what do we have so far? We have ether, ākāso, whose quality is sound, śabda-tanmātra-rūpakaḥ. We have air, vāyuḥ, whose quality is sparśa, touch. We have water, whose quality is taste, jalaṃ, and the taste is rasa, right? Then earth. Here the word for earth in that sentence is dharā, that which holds, right? It doesn't say prithvi or bhu, there's different words for earth. This one's going to be used in several verses. It's going to be used for earth. Usually we say, when being technical, we say prithvi as the earth element, right? It's also Mother Earth. That comes from a story where she who is dear to Prithu, which is a king of the ancient worlds, she was subdued by Prithu and gave boons to Prithu, so it became Prithvi. That's one of the causes of that name. But here, dharā, that which holds. So it's the earth, Mother Earth, or the earth globe, the earth that holds us up in the story, right? But it's also the earth element that holds everything. Everything ultimately, the solid form of everything is earth, right? Right. Whose quality, tato gandhātmikā dharā, right? Characterize the essence, the atmika of gandha, smell, right? So earth, space, air, water, and earth so far. That's what we have so far. Did we miss one? Oh, we missed one. So I'm sorry. I got so many verses on the thing. Then arose air, characterized by the quality of touch, followed by fire. Sorry, tejo-rūpātmakaṃ punaḥ, characterized by visible form. So fire is visible form. So we have air, fire, space, air, fire, water, and earth, right? And associated with their tanmatras. I have this this is a close-up of the larger chart that we had up earlier, just that bottom corner, that deals with the 5 elements: ether, air, fire, water, earth, right? Ākāso, vāyuḥ, agni, appa, and prithvi, or here dharā, right? And their corresponding qualities, their subtle elements, the subtle qualities of it, of shabda, sound, sparsha, touch, rupa, visible form, rasa, taste, and gandha, smell, right? But it's interesting. In this, you see the arrows go from sound to space, from touch to air, from form to fire, from taste to water, from smell to earth. Right. Usually like I said, normally we would think it'd be the other way around. But this is, and here you're going to explain literally how the various subtle qualities, the subtle elements, mix in a certain way to create the gross elements. Right. Sound mix each one of these elements will be a mixture of all 4, of all 5. Right, you go predominant. Like I'm just going to give it away a little bit. Sound will be predominant. Ether or space is predominantly made of sound as its quality, but it also has touch, form, taste, and smell. Right, air would be predominantly touch, but will also have sound, form, taste, and smell. Right, fire would be predominantly form, but will also have, to lesser degrees, in a certain mathematical equation. You probably read it. It's a little confusing. Sound, touch, form, and smell. So it goes like this, right? This is how. Right now we're talking. She's describing how we get the elements, but describing those elements as identified with their subtle qualities of sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. That's what this verse was. Go back to the verse here. Right. Out of the primal substance arose ether, endowed with the subtle quality of sound. Then arose air, characterized by the quality of touch, followed by fire, characterized by visible form. Next arose water, characterized by taste. Then earth, characterized by smell. We have the 5 elements and their subtle. We have the 5 mahabhutas, the great elements, the gross elements, earth, fire, water, ether, and their characteristic qualities, their subtle qualities, without which you don't get those elements of sight and taste and like that. Okay. So that mentioned when I gave that math, that strange math, right? Is that like air is space is predominantly sound, but also has other qualities. So now it's going to directly say Ma is going to directly say just that. This is verse 28 and 29. I put maybe my titles are a little off, but I'm pretty sure this is verse 20, the last part of 28 and the first half of 29. How I put the two together because it's a complete idea. Śabdaika-guṇa ākāso vāyus-tejo-rūpātmakaṃ śabda-sparśa-ravānitaḥ teja ityuchyate buddhai. Śabda-guṇa ākāso vāyuḥ. śabdaika-guṇa ākāso vāyuḥ. śabdaika-guṇa ākāsa. So it's describing ākāsa, space, right, has a single quality of śabda. Eka-guṇa has one quality of śabda, of sound, right? Space is only sound, something like this, right? Then it says, fire has the qualities of gunam teja. Teja has the gunas of sound, touch, and visible. I'm sorry, no, sorry. Air, sorry, I'm skipping. Sorry. Air has a single quality of sound. Ether has a single quality of sound. Air, Vayu is endowed with touch and sound. So air has only sound. Vayu, space has only sound. Sorry, it's all mixed up in my head. Space has only sound. Air has sound and touch as its distinct quality. It has its own quality and the preceding quality, right? So that is vāyuḥ-sparśa-ravānitaḥ, right? Air is endowed with touch and sound. Sparsha and ravānitaḥ. So fire. The next verse. Fire has the qualities of guna tejaha, sound, touch, and form, right? And visible has its own and the preceding other two, right? Śabda-sparśa-rūpa. It has, so tejas has a guna of a śabda-sparśa-rūpa, sound, touch, and visible form, according to the wise. Iti uchate buddhai. The wise, the illumined ones, the intelligent ones, right? They say uchate. They say this, right? So that claim, of course, this is a claim to authority, right? All the scripture, Ma has done. All the scriptures say, the Vedas declare, right? The wise have the wise believe, or the wise declare, right? So this is this is an ancient teaching, right? This is a claim that and actually later even it says it's in the Vedas. The Vedas declare this. The knowers of the Vedas declare it. This is the case, right? It's not obvious to us. We haven't thought it through, right? In this particular way, we think about it differently, right? So ether has a single quality of sound. Air has endowed with touch and sound. Fire has the quality of sound, touch, and visible form, according to the wise. We have a few more here. Let's see here. Next one. śabda-sparśa-rūpa-rasai, apoho. Let's see, śabda-sparśa-rūpa-rasa. And apoho. This apo, that, I should say, śabda-sparśa-rūpa-rasai-rapo vande guna smritaha, śabda-sparśa-rūpa-rasa gandhai pancha-guna dharā. Water has the four qualities. Rasa, the apo here, water has the four qualities of shabda, sparsha, rupa, and rasa, of sound, touch, form, and taste. So they say, right? Here, so they say is interesting. It actually says, what did it say? It says guna, it says veda guna smritaha, right? So looking at other translators, it's another way of saying, oh, the wise say, right? But it has, Swami Satyananda says the Vedas remember, it says Smritas remember, the Vedas remember these gunas, right? Swami Bhajanananda, I think, the Vedas and the Smriti, the Shruti and Smriti, right, declare this, right? It's a way of saying, but it's a claim of ancient knowledge. Ancient people, the wise people, the scriptural people, they have said this, right? So it's continuing that same claim to authority, right? So we've gone through space, air, fire, water, and earth. Also, so that is rasa apo, that's water. So we need earth here. Shabda sparsha rupa rasa gandhai panchaguna dharā, right? Earth, dharā, right, has five qualities, right? This is panchaguna, has five qualities, has all the preceding qualities: sound, touch, visible form, taste, and smell. So each one has the previous qualities plus its own distinct quality. So first it's saying each element has a quality, but actually each element has its quality and other qualities, preceding qualities. That means with each element, right, quality is being added. Like you can see, you say like that, it's like air does not have form, right? But or space does not have taste, right? So it doesn't have the qualities beyond it. It has the qualities of itself and the qualities preceding it. It's how we get, is describing how we get the gross elements through these mixtures of the subtle elements. So I have let me see real quick. So this is the last half of verse 30 and the full verse 31, I believe. Yeah. Tebhyo bhavan mahat sutram yallingam parichakshate shakshate sarvatmakam tat samproktam shukshmadeho yadatmanaha avyakritam karano deha, no, avyaktam karano deha sa chuktaha purvamevahi. So describe each element has its own quality, its own tanmatra, subtle quality, but actually each one of those elements is has a quality and its preceding quality, right? Now it's going to be this is going to be elaborated, but first it's going to say, from those subtle elements came into being the great cosmic thread, which is called the subtle body. Two words are here. Mahat Sutra, the great thread, right? Which on everything is strung, right? And that great thread is also called the linga, the lingam. Here, linga means subtle body, right? We had the causal body. Now it's describing from those elements, as just described, in that interesting, complicated thing, we get the subtle body. We get the subtle, the energetic, subtle body of the universe and ourselves, right? It is proclaimed, this subtle body, as all-pervading, sarvatmakam. It is everything you see is only that. You can't see anything in this world or in any world that's not made of these elements. It's only that, right? This is the subtle body. Sarvatam tat samproktam, sarvatmakam tat samproktam. It is proclaimed is this essence, the self of everything is everywhere. Saproktam. Has been proclaimed to be everywhere, right? Shukshma deho yadatmanaha. It is the subtle body of what? Of the self, right? So the self, the cosmic self, and our individual, if there's an individual self, this is our subtle body. Our subtle body, we live within, right? This body, this universe, and in this body, made of the elements that have come into being as described here, right? It is, but the subtle body is also so that's the subtle body. What about so she mentioned again the causal body, from which is the source. The unmanifest, avyaktam, 3 times mentioned, karano, deha, sa, choksha, purva, mevaha. The unmanifest is the karano deha, the causal body, right? Which I had mentioned earlier in her earlier talk, 4 or 5 verses earlier, right? In other words, she keeps repeating, like, understand this, understand that. Remember, don't forget that. Right. Now we'll do the next step, but don't forget, right? So the self lives in the subtle body made of the elements. The elements came out of Maya through this mixture, through this order with these qualities, each quality with its own quality, each quality including the previous elements' qualities. Right? That is our subtle body. And don't forget, our causal body is that unmanifested state, the avyaktam. Okay. So this is verse 31. I have it listed as 32 because I was moving things around just before our class. No, sorry, hold on. Sorry. Okay, yeah. All right, 32. Yasmin jagat bijarupam stitam lingo bhavayataha tathastulani bhutani panchakarana magataha. What was the last verse? The last thing she mentioned is the karana deha, the unmanifest. So this one refers to it. In that, the that here, right, refers to the karana deha, the causal body, right? In that lies the world seed. Yasmin jagat bija rupam stitam. Right, very interesting. So that is like the seed of everything. Don't forget, that is the seed of everything, right? From which evolves the subtle body. Linga adbhavo yataha. Right, from that, the linga, the subtle body, comes from that, springs from that. Yeah, how? Right, so that, okay, she's established what's the causal body, what's the subtle body, made of the elements with their qualities and a mixture of the previous qualities. But how does that happen? So he describes a process. This is a technical process, right? From that, and then it says it is like an incomplete sentence. The next, but by the process of 5-fold generation, the gross elements ... I'm gonna have to read for it. 5 in number arise. Right, that's the last part of that sentence. We'll go back here. Right, from that, from the causal, the seed, the world seed, springs, evolves, comes out the subtle body by what process? Right, so Sankhya has their version. Other people have different versions, right? But Vedanta has a system. Here you'll see it, panchikarana, right? And I had today, I think, explained it first in the morning. I mentioned it to Ananda, and it's the first time I said this particular word in English out loud. And then later, a couple hours later, I mentioned it to Swami Ambikananda, and he was like, "I never heard that." This is the second time I've ever said it out loud. It's let me let me get it right. The what's the number for five, Swami? What's the word, Swami? Quintification. Quintification. No, that right?
Quintiplification.
Quintiplification. There it is. By the process of quintiplification. Quintiplification is the making of five, making something out of five things, or making five things out of something. It's the process of how you get. He translated as fivefold generation, quintification. Also, there's another term also in other Vedantic texts is panchakritya, is sometimes mentioned, but here the text is primarily panchikarana. So we mentioned that the Tattva Bodha is a classic text of Advaita, attributed to Shankara. There's another important text also attributed to Shankara called the Panchikarana. Right. So obviously this is an important topic in Vedanta, right? Because you have Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta has, okay, we all have to figure out why there's something instead of nothing, why this was, how do we get this thing? How do we get this world? You know, oh, God made it. Well, that's simple. Great. What did he make a real world? Sure. He made a real world or a temporary world or something. You can give something like that. But when you hold actually there is no world and there's only Brahman, right? And there's no second self. Right. Well, it's very hard to understand the world, the practical cash reality of the world of us as individuals and a world that we seem to be experiencing, the Jeev and Jagat aspect. Right. And so this is one of the ways that Vedanta explains how you get a world, even though there's only the self, right? By this principle of Maya. And then how you add, how using the language, the Sankhya type language of the five elements, not identical to Sankhya though, it skips some of those stages. How you get an evolving, an actual or a seemingly evolved world, right? So through this process of the fivefold generation, panchikarana, quintiplification, the quintiplification process, right? So, actually, from my notes, I think that's as far as I got, but I did a few more in translation here. So in that lies the seed of the world, the subtle body, the causal body, from which evolved the subtle body. From that, by the process of fivefold generation, the gross elements, five in number, arise. So now we've gotten causal body, subtle body. Now we need stula sharira. We need a gross body. I think the word is there. The gross elements, stula, stulani, bhutani. We need to get the gross elements, right? So now we've talked about these subtle. Now we get the actual stuff that we touch, the things we can smell, things that we can see, right? The physical world in which we live, right? The gross world, which is the Devi or the reality is gross body in which the soul exists, and also our personal experiential world of our gross body in which we exist, right? So we've mentioned causal, subtle, now gross body. Those five gross elements, the solid elements, are five in number. We already know these: earth, fire, water, air, ether, right? Ether on the other direction, right? Made up of these five through this process. Now it's going to define a very interesting, a little bit complicated, but an interesting way of thinking of this. This is what these Vedantic texts say. Pancha sankyani jayante tat prakara swatochate purvotani chabutani pratyaktam vibhajed dvidha. Five in number arise. I shall now describe the process. Right? I shall now describe how it is. Right? Purvoktani chabutani. each of those elements, those bhutanis, right, that I previously mentioned, Purvoktani, I've talked to him, he's just building point for point, stage by stage. These elements I've mentioned, right, shall be divided, for our understanding, shall be divided in half, right? So I've given a little drawing here. The language, I'm not sure. It's not quite Spanish. It must.
I believe it's French.
It's French. Thank you, somebody. At the French. So those who, I mean, you can see still the legend is there. You can see the French is given along with the Sanskrit. So I think the Sanskrit's easier. So in the picture one, right? Let me see if I can make it bigger. No, I can't. Picture one, you see each one shall be divided in half, right? So that the first half is its own quality. I mean, the next verse will say this, right? Its own distinctive quality. Earth out the space, and then each one will have in a particular mixture the other qualities of the other elements. How you get gross elements. Let's see what it says. Ekaikam bhagamat mekasya charturda vibhajit gire swaswatara dvitiyamse yojanat panchate tatkaryam cha viradeha stula deho yatatmanaha. My notes didn't carry over this last few verses, so I have to do a little bit by memory. So each one, the first one says, each one shall be divided into half, right? One half of each part, right, shall be divided into four. And we have the drawing of that, right? So one half, and then the other half is divided into four, right? O mountain, Giri, right? O mountain king, Himalaya. By joining the undivided half of each element with one of the quartered fractions from each of the other four, each element becomes fivefold, right? And they produce the cosmic body, the virat deha, this cosmic body, or gross body, stula deha, right, of the Atman, Atmanaha. Right, my Atman, my body, and my gross body, and but the cosmic being, the self itself, Brahman itself, it lives seemingly in a cosmic body, in this gross body. This is how you get it, right? So again, so let's by joining the undivided half of each element with one of the quartered fractions from each of the other four, each element becomes fivefold. This is a process called Panchikarana, right? That's what's meant by Panchikarana, this process, right? And they produce the cosmic body or gross body of the self. So in Swami, actually, it's interesting. This is there's another I've given a few translations of the Devi Gita. Of course, Mackenzie Brown, Swami Satyananda is also there. Then there's also Swami Bhajanananda, it's his direct disciple, Sri Ramakrishna. I've given you a PDF of his translation of the pertinent parts, right? There's another one I'm forgetting. I also gave you as another option or suggestion you can get, but that one is primarily, probably I would say 90%. Just copying or plagiarizing Swami Bhajanananda, right? And I have another one still, 2 volumes. I was thrilled that I got it because I'm thrilled because it has all the Sanskrit, Devanagari in it, right? This is by Professor Pushpendra Kumar, edited with an introduction by translation by Ray Bahudar Sri Chandra, right? So Ray Bahadar Suchandra, it is also about 80%, maybe 85%, non-different from Bhajanananda. So it's a little bit plagiarizing for sure, right? But it shows you how important Bhajanananda's translation is. At one time it was all that there was, and so everybody used it, even if they're writing their own, doing their own. They're primarily their thing. But in it, he gives in the middle of this section, he gives a graph. So I took a picture with my phone. Here's the graph, right? The panchīkarana process is clearly illustrated in the following table. So if you're a little bit confused, do not worry. It's now going to be clearly illustrated in this following table, right? So ether, ākāso, so you can see there, it's 1/2. Remember, it's 1/2, and it has the other half is 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8 goes to make up the other half, right? So ether has all the qualities, and the actual elements of air, fire, water, and earth, but primarily it's ether. Air, you see, 1/2 of its quality is air, but 1/8 is ether, 1/8 is fire, 1/8 is water, 1/8 is earth. Fire, you see, 1/2 is fire and those qualities, but 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, like this, right? And you get all together at the bottom, nice mathematical thing, one gross element. This is how you get a gross element, right? Right. And then back to this graphic. You can see this in this kind of same way, right? Each element has 1/2 plus. This is just a chart version of it. Let me go back to my notes here.
Guruji,
Yes, tell me.
the screen isn't sharing.
It's not sharing again.
Mm-mm.
Did you have the chart?
Not just the last one that you were talking about? No.
Let me stop share and do share again. I don't know. I'm having glitches today. Do you see that chart?
There she is.
Chart is there. Okay, I'll leave this up so you can see. So ether is 1/2 plus 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8. Air 1/2 plus 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8. And there at the bottom to get my punchline again. It's no fun, not funny the second time you say it, but one gross element. There I did again. Right. Be here all week. So you can see this is how the elements come in as per these Vedantic texts, right? And you can see in Sankhya, it's not unrelated. It's the same thing. It's just described a little differently, and you don't really get this mixture. At least in most, I mean, I have not. Maybe I'm not an expert at the classical Sankhya texts. You know, maybe I can look at the Sankhya Karnika. I don't know. Karnika is maybe it has this. I don't think it does. I'm a little bit familiar with it, but I haven't read it in a long time. But this is definitely the way this is taught in Vedanta, in the Advaita Vedantic schools, right? How you get the 5 elements, and from that you get the 5 bodies, the 5 bodies, and the 3 bodies, the subtle, the 5 sheaths and the 3 bodies, right? This is described being like that, right? And then you see that picture? Okay, good. So this is again, this is the graphic representation of the same, of each 1/2 divided in half, the other things into fourths, and from that you get it. Now, yeah. Let me see what I have in my notes. I haven't looked at my notes. So I'm just going to I don't want to miss anything before we open it for questions. The process of I have it written here, quintuplication, right? Vedanta posits 5 subtle elements, the tanmātras, which are the fundamental building blocks of the material world in subtle state: sound, sparsha, touch, śabda, touch, sparsha, form, rupa, taste, rasa, smell, gandha, right? In the quintuplication process, each subtle element is initially divided into 2 halves. 1/2 of each element is then further divided into 4 parts. The undivided halves of each subtle element is then combined with 1/8 part of each of the other 4 subtle elements, right? As a result, each gross element is formed from a combination of 1/2 of its corresponding subtle elements and the 4 fractions of each of the other 4 subtle elements. Okay. Now, in Vedanta, why is this important? I mean, this is being used to describe something, right? Quintuplification represents a transition from the subtle realm, the tanmatras, to the gross physical world, the panchabhutas, right? This process is considered a key step in the creation of the universe and of the individual's body, according to Vedanta. Quintuplification also helps establish the relationship between the microcosm, the individual body, and the microcosm, the universal body. Right? So it's not just a physical process, but also a philosophical concept, illustrating how qualities are perceived and superimposed on the perceived forms, even on formless ether. So it's also describing, because they've also used, right, how you get this world, but then this is a world we perceive, right? And if there's no world to perceive, that has to be understood also. So Ma will also, there'll be a little more next week, or I'm not sure next week we have a special puja. We have puja next week. I'm not sure we can do this next week, but the week after that for sure. Ma will continue describing how we get the 5 pranas and mind and intellect, sattva-guna. So it's continuing this description, right? But ultimately, and then she switches form and says like, oh, the self is projected on this elaborate reality that comes from Maya, right? And loses itself, right? So it's also a way of understanding either through the evolutionary scheme or a projection scheme, how they work together, perhaps. So is a process as a panchakarana is a creation of the elements by a process in which subtle matter transforms itself into gross matter. Intelligence is a subtle manifestation of consciousness, and matter is its gross manifestation. And I have 3-4 pages of definitions here, but this is the gist. I hope I got most of that stuff out. So this is so we may think like, why are we talking about all this? It must be important, right? You know, she starts this section, listen well, O gods, right? Right. This will be good. This is important to understand, right? Like maybe it's not, maybe to everybody it's not important to understand. Maybe we're temperamentally situated, our temperament, or due to past life experience, that we're not terribly bewildered by a material world, right? And we're not troubled by the seeming discrepancies between our ideal ideas, the ideals of the ideal world of Brahman and self and Atman and Paramatman and God and heaven and all these things, with the reality of the material world, right? Of limitation and of suffering also. This also deals with the problem of evil and things like that, if we wanted to analyze it that way too, right? And so maybe these things do not haunt you at night. How do we get it? Why is there a world again? Or doesn't the world disprove Brahman? You know, I mean, these questions come up, but there is you may or may not be satisfied with the answer given, right? But answers have been developed. This is not the only answer. This is not the only way to think of this, right? But it's a pretty sophisticated one, right? And found in ancient texts and described in the earliest strata of Vedantic literature and the earliest commentaries by the disciples of Adi Shankara, and still being studied today, right? And so, because this is not normally a class, this is not my class on Advaita Vedanta. I'm not qualified, neither by knowledge, education, or temperament, to give a class on pure Advaita Vedanta, right? But the goddess is exactly qualified to give such a class. So she's given us a little bit of a taste of using this understanding. And next week or the next couple of weeks, she'll develop it more, and we'll see where she goes with this. But ultimately, she's describing how the goddess is the material and the efficient and material cause of this of the world, right? This is explaining that point, because this is this is actually very theologically a very, we'd call, sophisticated high theology for the goddess. The goddess herself, right, is taking the place of a supreme deity, right, as a supreme theistic queen of the universe, countless universes, right, the supreme ruler, but also the supreme reality, using the language of Vedanta, of the Upanishads, right? And then she'll also describe herself as a primality according to Tantra and according to yoga and like that. So these are all ultimately important. Thank you for your patience and kind attention. Are there any questions or comments? It's 8:34. I see, is Ragini
Ragini.
waving or something, or
She's clapping too.
All
she's
right.
clapping?
I'm just applauding. Wow.
Well, that's good because this was.
I have a twofold question. I guess the first one is I'm just confused. So I'll start with that one. When we're talking about mathematical combinations here, when is math created in this process? Because I guess I would assume that one would have to have physical form in order to.
Well, it's interesting because of course, some hold that math are eternal verities that don't. They're the purest forms of anything, right? The only actually even interesting. We use the word prove a lot. The only thing you can prove is the math formula. Everything else is just good or bad evidence for anything. Proof is a mathematical point, right? So math is its own glorious conceptual idea, but so maybe whatever it is, maybe it's like math existed, and people thought about the world and how the elements came, and they described or maybe math exists because it's describing an actual process of creation, right? One half of this. When you only had one without, actually Ma says, I'm one without a second. There's no other besides me, right? There's no there's no thing to cut in half. There's no two parts of it. You can't separate that and add that, and right. And even the closest get to math, even like the Upanishadic mantra, peace mantra, Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamachid, that from the full, like that's like pre-math math. There's only one thing. If you were to take something out of that, it would only be one thing. If you were to add something like that, there'd only be one thing. There's always only one thing, right? So from that level, so there's nothing to cut in half, there's nothing to separate, there's nothing to multiply and reduce and plus like that. There's only one thing. But maybe the very process of the one becoming many, that itself is a mathematical way of speaking. From one, you have multiple. That's already used in the language. So maybe the very process that creates the reality of mathematical verities, and that then we develop, and they're still developing, trying to understand the beauty of it all, or But I have to be careful because I have a classic math phobia. So even anything using remotely the language of mathematics, even the most simple things like you take one, you cut it in half, and that isn't the four. Like, no. My blood pressure goes up, anxiety, junior high school, everything comes back. It's a simple thing like that, right? So it's funny because in my philosophy classes, and I remember at Orange Coast College, I took a logic class, right? And logic class, one of my favorite classes. I did very well, and it was a very good class. I did very well, except for symbolic logic, which is not mathematical, but it uses the symbols of math, equals, things like this, right? And just the symbols made me react in a way that
wasn't it like P for premise plus
all this. I mean, it's
Atmaram would know.
I also learned it, and I actually it was beneficial. I mean, I'm here in my push for studying formal argument structures, and math. Symbolic logic allows you to strip down everything now to very formal things, independent of what's being said. You can see, and look at it that way, as well as some formal fallacies and informal fallacies like that. It helped me a lot, and pretty soon I'd look at like almost like a weird like Twilight Zone episode where you imagine somebody put on glasses or something, and you see everyone, they see the monsters in the crowd or something, I'd put on the glasses of symbolic math and all these things. I look up at billboards and see, almost could see everything in its formula and see where the mistakes were, right? And it's interesting, but it's actually a horrible way to live. It's good to be a careful thinker, but I had to like take off those glasses and shake them out of my head, right? So anyways, it's but I'm getting off but where, anyways, yeah. So the whether we're discovering what's, I think her very process of one becoming many, and also we in Tantra we like to think of the bindu, the one that has no mass, right? Explodes, but doesn't explode like we usually think of like a big bang, just exploding world out of some point that didn't exist into everything flying away from each other. We see it as mathematical. We see it like the Sri Chakra, right? We see it or these 24 cosmic principles or 36 cosmic principles, as a process of intermixing in the triangles, and it's visualized as geometry, right? So it's interesting that it's seen, maybe that's the source of it. The reason we have geometry, because that's the reality. Because mathematics, because that's how it's the basis of everything. Well, you had a second question?
Yes, thank you, Guruji. So when we're talking about the elements, we're talking not about their gross structures, but we're talking about like their essence or their form in a Plato sense.
So yeah, it's because you have to think about, like, as I mentioned, these are experiential descriptions of the elements, right? So like fire is different than water, right? But you can have like wet wood and burning wood, right? Or something like or you can have like soggy mashed potatoes and dry it out and light it on fire, and you have burning mashed potatoes, right? So it's like it's not elements exactly the way we think of them, like the periodical things or of things made of atoms. Actually, the things made of atoms are usually one of those states of space, air, water, gas, water, fire, or solid. So it's describing that. So it's a little bit, we're not accustomed to thinking as elements that way. But it is literally, because you can see that their essence, the subtle elements that create the gross elements, are sight and taste, right? It's the way we're exposed to these elements is through the senses, right? And sense experience, right? So they're not are they something of themselves? Anyway, this is the material. This is the world. She's describing the world we experience, right? That's the point, right? The world that we experience, right? Or we think we do. Yeah. Anything else? Yes. Heather.
Hi. I had a question. So with the 5 elements and to the causal and the subtle to the gross body, and you're talking about like the microcosm to the macrocosm.
Yeah.
So would Kali be, or would the Mahadevi be talking from like does she also contain all of those things?
Yes, for sure, because she's like that she's a foundation of everything, the substructure,
and that
right?
We expand from her.
And actually, and everything expands from her, but actually exists within her, right? She's it's like she's existence itself, and things that exist within the category of existence. She's existence itself, right? And yeah, she's to use, now we're going into more devotional language, but trillions of universes float in her womb. Everything comes from her. All the elements, if they exist, they come from her, right? And they exist within her, right?
So would there be like, if there's a causal and a subtle, would there also be a gross body for Ma? Would we consider those like her merites or her holy places?
Like that, but the gross body of Ma is the universe.
The universe. Okay, I got it.
And so you see, and also this is a thing that actually in the Devi Gita, she does this move a few times too. And this is a common theme I know she does it overtly actually in the next chapter, with showing her universal form, where the world is identified with her body. And this happens in Bhagavatam, where Krishna is seen, or Vishnu is seen as called Virat Purusha, the cosmic being, right? Where the mountains are her hair, right? Or the trees of the mountains are her hair. The birth and death is her front and back. Sun, moon, and fire are her three eyes, right? The earth is her feet, right? Action are her hands, and everything in this universe is seen as identified with the cosmic body of the goddess, right? So that's also that's a dramatic and theistic way, overwhelming way to think of her, right? But then there's also, it's not easy to think. Swami Chaitanya always says, can you love somebody whose right eye is a sun, left eye is a moon, and third eye is fire, right? It's not easy to have an affection toward that, right? So we can also have, made also out of the same elements, out of the Panchabhutas, right? We can have murtis made that also show her in beautiful form, you know? Just like our body is also her form. Our body is our home. We exist in our body. She exists in our body as us, and she exists in this universe as a soul of the universe, but also as us. We're in this universe too, right? And she can also, in a very real way, as per the devotional and tantric tradition, exist in a very special and direct way, in a murti or yantra, things like that. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lakanji.
Lakan.
Maya and Shakti, are they basically the same thing?
Again?
Maya and Shakti, are they interchangeable?
In some systems they're interchangeable, right? So she even says here in this text that Maya is a particular Shakti of hers. It's one of her energies, right? So so sometimes Shakti is identified as Maya in some schools, and sometimes that's an easy way to, when you hear a story of some Shakti or some deity, that's Maya, that Shakti itself is Maya. But in this text specifically, she is Shakti itself, right? And she has Shakti, right? You know, it's like, I'm powerful, but I also have various powers, right? Or I'm power itself, but I also have various powers. So Brahman and Shakti, or the goddess and Shakti, are non-different, or in one very real way. But it also has specific powers. So Maya is a Shakti, right? A Shakti of Brahman, or a Shakti of the Mahadev, the great goddess, who is Shakti. Who is Shakti also itself. So it depends on you. The problem is that we're using the language of one tradition in another tradition, and she herself does this in this text. So it's a little messy. But Shakti, some would hold, I mean, in Sanskrit Vedanta, Maya and Shakti are the exact same thing. When you see Shakti, you mean Maya, right? But usually we think Maya is a Shakti, one particular power. There's other powers of Brahman. There's other powers of the goddess, not just a power to create a material world, right? There's other powers. There's also powers to liberate a material world, right? So there's and so even in the tradition idea of Ishvara, a god, or the Ishwari, the goddess, her Shaktis, creation is one of her Shaktis. Which is, and if creation comes out of Maya, that means Maya is one of her Shaktis. But she also has the power of sustenance, of destruction, of covering, of illusion, and of revealing, of showing grace and liberation, and countless others, right? So I would say Maya is one of her Shaktis. But in some texts, in some traditions, when you see Maya, when you see Shakti, you can put in Maya and make sense of it. Yeah.
Sorry for follow-up. That she can manifest in special ways, I guess that'd be through Maya, or the creation, or however you would word it, like special in Mortis, and maybe would you say that and you said something earlier about conscious and unconscious simultaneously, the point is, what I'm trying to get to, see if I can get some fuel for I have this ongoing debate with Vinay about AI,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to win, obviously.
No, you're not going to win any debate with Vinay. You'll have fun doing it.
Yeah. My latest point is that it's all Shakti, like the way that God or Ma can speak to nature, you know, the universe, and even other humans, but other humans are not necessarily, I don't know if I'm saying that right, like real. Like I don't trust him more than I trust AI at times. Like
Yeah.
there's fallacies in what he says to me, just like he likes to point out the fallacies in AI. But I'm like, it's all the same. But I don't know. Is that making sense? I'm just looking for fuel for my.
Yeah. No, but you know, in the beginning of this section, some time ago, quite a while ago, we last talked about it, where she makes a very distinct thing that it is not conscious, not just AI, like nothing except the self is conscious, right? You know, it's like because, and he gives different things. It's an object of awareness. An object is always not sentient. Right. That's using that definition. No amount of details within the field of consciousness is conscious. There are always details within consciousness. Right. That's a point. I mean, I don't think she was prefiguring the debate on this. Right. But like for instance, so there's a difference between being conscious and thinking. Like thinking is a process. Is a you know, I can train something to do something. I can train you to do something, your mind to do something. I'm not training your consciousness, right? Because your mind and the thing and your thoughts are never conscious. They're always object of consciousness, right? So I can be like, I can train your brain to do something, right? And maybe I can train, or it can be trained like a computer program to do something very sophisticated. It's like human minds can be very, but it's never by her standard, by our standard, it's never conscious. Only the self is consciousness, only conscious, right? It's very impressive, right? It brings up all kinds of it's a moral and other questions for sure, right? And exciting questions perhaps, or scary questions, or unnecessary questions. But from this perspective, it's not. So then it's not even like intelligence. Obviously, you can have natural intelligent things and artificially intelligent things, right? But the question is whether it's conscious. That's the question that she could ask here. Of course, it's in the realm of Shakti. Shakti's doing all this stuff. It's also, I mean, so in that sense, everything in the realm of Shakti, right? Now but yeah, that's where very interesting. I'd like to talk to him about this, or hear you guys talk about this, because I mean, I know a little bit of what his opinion on these things, because I've had some. I talk to him for a half hour 4 times a year, so I don't get a chance to have as much conversation as you are from him, but yeah.
If you don't mind this joke, I realized today I'm going to, when we say J, like victory,
Yeah.
in a sense, when we spell that, we're saying JAI, victory to AI.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hari-Om. Thank you. Anything else? Hari-Om. I think it's probably good. It's getting late. So anyway, thank you very much. And next week, I don't think, I mean, we have nothing planned on Wednesday, but Tuesday is Amavasya. And just knowing our present workload and health level, right? And requirements right now, it would be, I'd be free on Wednesday night, theoretically, but I wouldn't be free for any day before then to work on notes and translation. And you can see these, part of it is just having the graphic and thinking about it and finding what the words mean so you can talk about it. And these are not like easy sections, you know, and the next section gets even more complicated. So I'm sorry to have not been able to be as regular with these classes, but we're there's only a few of us here and a lot of responsibilities right now, and so sometimes we're giving it our best shot. And we're hoping as the summer goes, we still have a course to record, right? So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out like how can we do it. So I know revered Swami Chaitanya comes in next month, and that allows that we don't have to program. It has its own work, but it doesn't require that we have to prepare our Saturday talks. That might give us a little bit of window to our recordings for the next recorded course. But I'll let you guys know about. But anyways, we're so maybe if not next week, I'll look at the schedule next week, the week after that, and I'll put up on the Devi Gita page when the next one. So thank you for your patience. We'll get going again. I'm anxious to. I mean, I love Devi Gita, and I'm sad that it faltered a little bit. Faltered, that the word? Yeah, I guess faltered. Shri Guru Maharaj Ji ki jai, Mahamayi ki jai, Swamiji Maharaj Ji ki jai, Ma Bhuvaneshwari ki jai, Ma Dakshineshwari Bhavatarani Dakshina Kali ki jai. Jai Ma. Hari Om.
Night.
Jai Ma. Hari Om.